I got 4th place at Praxis 5, and that's like basically, I don't know if you guys know, like, you know, you guys might not have heard of that tournament. You know, I didn't really either hear about that tournament, but it's like winning a super major, you know, because like, you know, any PM tournament that's still around is like a super major, because you really don't know if Nintendo's gonna come after you. Alright, what is going on, guys? Honest Content here. We are back with another tier list video. I did a tier list video last year. There are a couple characters that I would say have done better this year than they have in previous years. There's a couple characters that'll have, you know, a little bit different placement, but it's not going to be tremendously different. I do think some of my takes on some of the characters last year, I do disagree with some of my takes, and this tier list will kind of reflect that. Also, before we start the tier list, Dedede is a bad character, and don't play Dedede if you're playing this game. Just don't. I mean, if you like having fun, you know, don't play Dedede. I'm kidding, but anyways, let's just get right to the tier list. Stupid jokes aside. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same format as I did last year on last year's tier list. I'm going to start with the characters that so we'll do like one character at the top, and then we'll start with one character in the low tier. I kind of like that format. Keeps it going, keeps it interesting. The one thing I should preface before beginning, though, is the cast is like really close in this game. This is not like Melee, where, you know, half the cast is like unviable and you can't really play them. You know, like if you try to play Ness in Melee, you know, that's not really gonna work out. You're gonna end up hating yourself. This isn't really like that at all. In fact, any character is actually viable in this game, and that's one of the cool things about PM. That's one of the cool things about Project Plus and how close the meta is you could really play any character. That's really, you know, how interesting this game is. There's a lot of, you know, matchups that aren't really explored. You know, because there's so many viable characters, there's a lot of matchups that we don't really know about. But what really makes a high tier and what makes a low tier, I would say like a low tier in P+ would be like, you know, maybe like a mid tier in Melee, you know what I mean? So that's like how close, you know, how viable these characters are. They're all good on paper. But what makes like a top tier character is like, are they seen in tournament a lot? Are you seeing them all the time in top 8s? Are a lot of people maining that character at like different levels of play? Usually a top tier character in P+, they have some sort of option or some sort of feature that like kind of pushes them a little bit higher than the other characters in the cast, and they're usually good in multiple areas. That's a big thing as well. If they're not good in multiple areas, they're gonna have trouble against certain matchups because some characters just will bully them. But again, it's not nearly as bad as like Melee. All these characters are good, so if you want to play any of these characters, go for it. So I think the best, I said Wolf last year. I'm gonna agree with that again. Now, I think over time it is possible that Wolf could drop in the meta, and that's mainly because there's starting to be more counterplay developed with the character. Wolf is not broken, though, by any means. He's just used by a lot of, you know, top players like Switch. There's a lot of people that main Wolf in like lower levels of play and even mid levels of play. He's definitely the best spacey by far in the game. His projectile is really, really good. It's very unique. He can wave land out of it, which is kind of insane on paper. But he is combo food, so because he's a spacey, he's going to get comboed very easily. He can get chain grabbed by other characters. But just because he has those faults, like, he's still a incredibly good character. Why, like, maybe in the future I could see him falling a little bit, but not a lot. I still think he's always going to be a solid character. Is like the counterplay with dealing with Wolf's laser. I think that's going to be a big thing in the future. Is like, okay, so can characters, you know, can they clank with his laser? They can use their own projectiles to stop it. You know, what can they hit it back or whatever? Laser counterplay is going to be very important in the future with Wolf. He is kind of like comboed very hard, but he's still like his aggressive and just great grabs, just everything that he has on paper is already just so good. And he's used in a lot of top 8s, like just kind of solidifies his placement a lot. So what makes the worst character in P+? A character that I would say is the worst in P+, they probably aren't going to be seen a lot in tournament play compared to the other characters relatively. And I think in my last tier list I had Kirby, but I'm actually going to put Puff this time around. And the reason why is because, you know, a year has kind of passed and I still don't see like Puff really used nearly as much as I would like to. And for those who don't know, Puff is not necessarily like nerfed. It's not like nerfed melee Puff. It's just melee Puff having to deal with a lot of other characters that can also just beat her really well. And one of the things in melee that makes Puff so good is because the cast is so close. That means Puff doesn't have to deal with as many matchups, which is a big reason why she's a lot lower on the P+ tier list, because there's so many characters that can combo her. She's also invalidated by another character that is much better than her in the cast. There's a lot of characters that like do the same thing Puff does, but just way better. And like Hungrybox was trying to push the character like years ago, like in 2016, and Hungrybox is like arguably the best Puff main probably ever. Maybe top 15 with the character in 2016, but you know, a big thing with Puff is he had to deal with all these characters, you know, that normally Hungrybox would not ever have to fight against, you know, and that's a big thing holding Puff back. And also, I don't really see her used a lot. There's not like a solidified Puff like PM main that is like going to top 8s with the character. That's a big thing. And there's not a lot of Puffs really in general either. I was definitely a little more hesitant on giving Puff the worst character, but like honestly, I just had to be real with myself and realize like, yeah, this character's not really used that much compared to everyone else. And I honestly, if no one's gonna pick up the character and really push Puff like on the PM side of things, like I don't really see Puff getting used a lot in the meta. Now some people are okay with it because some people would think if Puff was, you know, running the meta, like if Puff was a lot better, people would be mad about it. So a lot of people are okay with this, you know, and that's okay. Whenever you have a tier list like this, there's going to be a character that's going to be the worst, but it doesn't mean they're unviable. You can still do well with Puff. It's just she's invalidated by other characters in the cast, and no one's really maining her. So that's a big thing about it. Okay, here's another drastic difference from my other tier list. If you saw my recent video that I made on the high tiers, or like who I think is the best in P+, I talked about Zero Suit Samus, and I definitely underrated her heavily last year. I put her in like high tier, like mid-high tier. She's definitely very good, and Malachi made that even more of a present thing this year by basically picking up any character he feels like maining and doing well with the character, and Zero Suit Samus was one of them. He was playing with Zero Suit Samus earlier in the year, making the character look really good. I think one of the things about Zero Suit Samus is she was pretty underrated in the past, and that's partly why I didn't really right away think she was like an amazing character, because she wasn't really used a lot in earlier PM updates and stuff like that. You weren't seeing Zero Suit Samus like as much as other characters, but she was still good. But what the thing is when characters get nerfed, when other characters get buffed, so on and so forth, you kind of see when like a diamond in the rough is going to rise in the cast, and Zero Suit Samus was definitely one of those like diamond in the rough characters. What makes her so good is she has a really good projectile. She has probably one of the best recoveries in the game, arguably. She has like multiple recovery tools, her tether recoveries. She has like all of her special moves can basically be used as a recovery tool, and then on top of that she has like amazing aerial drift, so like Puff-esque aerial drift, and is incredibly fast too. She's faster than Sheik at like max speed, so she's an incredibly fast character. The only thing probably like holding her back, and it's not even really that big of a thing, is like she is taller and kind of a lankier character, so she can maybe have trouble against like characters like Squirtle and Kirby, characters that could like duck under her and like kind of avoid her attacks. But she's just a ridiculous character on paper, and honestly I kind of look back and I was like, oh, I definitely did not realize the positives that were on paper with Zero Suit Samus, because they're all there. I think time will tell like where she solidifies, but she could maybe in the future be higher than Wolf. Like if you thought that, like, hey, I wouldn't put it against you. The next character I would say is Dedede, on the low tier. I did joke about Dedede earlier, but Dedede is not a horrible character. Just really the big thing holding him back, that kind of niche big character archetype where he can get comboed very easily. Doesn't really have a solid projectile, even though he does have Waddle Dees, which help with his mobility. But when he doesn't have Waddle Dees on the field, it's very hard for him to approach. It's very hard for him to get in. characters can camp him and kind of play lame, and it does kind of suck. But once he gets in, he kind of does have more tools. Like, his grabs are actually incredible. Really good grabs. He has chain grabs that are really kind of just like feel like they're kind of busted, but like it takes a lot for really Dedede to get in, and that's the main thing holding him back. There also isn't a crazy amount of Dedede mains because of that, because his like kind of character archetype is kind of so niche. He's not like Bowser. He wasn't like buffed tremendously, you know, like we'll talk about Bowser later, but you know, he wasn't given a crazy amount of buffs in P+. You will see Dedede upset players. Like, Dedede is not a horrible character. It's just like mainly just what he is, like what his character archetype is usually the character archetype that is never really going to be that viable in competitive play, but still not bad. Like, he still has some nice redeeming qualities about him. His kind of character archetype is so different, and kind of not everybody's going to really like that. So that's why not a lot of people are really playing Dedede, and you don't really see him a lot in like top 8s and stuff like that. But every now and then you will see a Dedede kind of do some crazy upsets, and you know, there are Dedede mains out there that do pride themselves, you know, in maining the character. So he does have some qualities. It's just, you know, he is what he is, basically. The next character I would say that is probably one of the best is Mewtwo. Mewtwo has a crazy amount of options. Maybe say he's one of the most technical characters in the game. That mainly has to do with the fact that Mewtwo has so much unique tech skill that not a lot of characters have. He has a float that he's really the only one that he has, and he can do things like float nair, float back air. This isn't 3.0 Mewtwo. This isn't Mewtwo where he was like incredibly busted and like teleporting through the stage and you know, doing a bunch of jank stuff. But this is kind of a more nerfed version of Mewtwo, but he's still crazy good. The thing with Mewtwo though, and we'll see if he really stays in this point in the future, is like it takes a lot to main the character at really high levels. He's kind of like Lucas, where he's like incredibly technical and you got to know all of his, you know, crazy tech that he has. But once you get to that point where you're kind of just like pushing the character at crazy high levels, then that's when Mewtwo starts to look really good. He is really light, so that's the one thing like holding him back, is he's really light, so he can get killed really easily. He can get KO'd just like, you know, by really easy combos if he's not careful. And he is a bigger character as well, so he can also get comboed and clipped by projectiles pretty easily. But his offensive tools are like so unique and so like good. He's definitely a big threat, as long as like people are willing to push him and people are willing to show that, hey, Mewtwo is doing stuff still. I think he definitely deserves his spot up here. Now the next character, Kirby, has a little bit of a glow up this year, not by a crazy amount, but I put Kirby as the worst character last year, and it mainly had to do with the fact that, like, kind of similar to the other two characters, Kirby doesn't really have a specific niche where he like really excels in. There's more people playing Kirby at like mid and like higher levels of play. In fact, there was a Kirby main that beat Switch's Wolf with Kirby, which is kind of insane to think about. I think Kirby has like the most potential out of any of the low tiers. That's why I put him in the higher end of the low tier. I still think it's going to take time to really see where he's going to go. But like the thing with Kirby is he's really light. Some of his attacks don't really do a lot of knockback, you know, so it's harder for people to really grasp onto the character. But he does still have strong attacks. Like, he's not like a, you know, tremendously weak character. It's just like he's really small, doesn't have a lot of range. And he can get KO'd really easily, kind of similar to like Jigglypuff. But this year especially, I was kind of surprised by seeing like the Kirby mains kind of rise up a little bit. Now, if Kirby starts performing well, like more people are upsetting with Kirby and stuff like that, then sure, I definitely could see Kirby being like a mid tier, maybe high mid. I don't know. That would be a crazy. If that happens, I'll let you guys know. But I could definitely see Kirby at least becoming mid in the future. I think out of any of these low tiers, he has the most amount of promise. There wasn't a lot of people playing Kirby at all in the past. He was really underplayed. Okay, so for Meta Knight has arguably some of the best frame data out of any of the top tiers. And that's a big reason why he is so high on the tier list, is he has some of the best frame data in the game. Now, for being a really small character, he has a decent amount of range. Now, he doesn't have like Marth and Roy-esque range, but he has a decent amount of range. His attacks are really fast. His recovery is also kind of like, I don't say busted in a bad way, but it's really good. His recovery options are insane. A lot of his special moves, if not all of them, can be used as recovery tools, and he's one of the few characters that has a glide in the game. His up B can also be used as, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you reverse up B, you can actually recover really quickly on stage, and it catches people off guard because they're not used to that technique. You can get back really fast by reverse up Bing, and then he will just like loop back very quickly. It's kind of cool, actually. The thing holding Meta Knight back, like the thing we have to look out for in the future is, like, yeah, there was a point where there was a lot of Meta Knight mains, but none of them were like really winning with the character. Like you wouldn't see Meta Knight in grand finals a lot. What's really gonna matter, I think, is, yeah, there were a lot of people maining the character, but none of them were like pushing Meta Knight Thunder's Reign level, if that makes sense. There were a few, don't get me wrong, but like for a character that like had the best frame data, you weren't really seeing him nearly as much as you would think. But I still think like he's good. I still think he has a lot of promise. I think put him at number 4 is fine. I think that's fair. The next low tier, I guess the number 4 was worse, but like not really. They're not really that bad. I would put Squirtle in mid tier. The thing about Squirtle is he isn't really played nearly as much as the other characters. That's kind of a big thing holding him back. There are people like there's definitely people out there. There's some Squirtle mains that are maining the character that really love Squirtle. The thing about Squirtle though is he is kind of in his own lane, if that makes sense. He's kind of small. He has a lot of tech that only has to do with him, like shell shifting. He's really like Luigi-esque, just like kind of just like in his own lane. He has a really slippery wave dash. He doesn't really hit that hard. Like his KO power is only really with a couple moves that he has, but he moves really fast and just has a crazy amount of mobility. If you like Luigi in melee, like Squirtle is kind of like an offset like version of that. But because he's like kind of so niche and like in his own lane, that kind of holds him back from like the rest of the cast. Like he's not like as standardized as like, you know, the top tier characters. But don't get me wrong, you will see Squirtle every now and then like doing work. You'll even in like maybe top 8s, which is why I kind of put him in mid tier, because there are still like people, I believe like Cloudburst that were maining the character and really liked Squirtle. He's kind of that small, nimble, you know, fast character archetype that might not excel in like, you know, kill power or, you know, KO damage or whatever, but he's kind of doing his own thing basically. Not a horrible character though, not a horrible character for sure. I would love to see if there was more Squirtle mains out there. That would be cool because he is a fun character to watch for sure. The next character I would put at number 5, I would put Wario pretty easily. Wario is definitely deserved of the top spot. Wario is the Jigglypuff of this game. He basically invalidates Puff in like almost every area, really. Like what Puff wants to do, like Wario does very effectively and does better. If you like Puff and Melee, try out Wario, because Wario has the same like aerial drift as like, or very similar aerial drift compared to Puff, and has a rest basically, but his like charges, and he doesn't become invulnerable, or I'm sorry, he doesn't become in a bad position when he misses a rest, for example, or his down B. His down B can be used as a recovery tool. He has Bite, which is also incredibly underrated. Bite is like, it can go through shields and start up combos, and Bite also helps with his down B. It also adds, his Bite allows him to get to his KO move a lot quicker. Definitely a really good character. People like Sosa have really shown that Wario is incredibly good. You know, Sosa's done very, very well with the character. You could even argue Wario might be a little bit higher, but I think all these characters in the top tier, like, they're all really close. They're all really, really close. Just in general, though, Wario is a great character. If you like that archetype of, like, the Puff-esque archetype, like, Wario is doing that, like, in strides. He's just, like, an incredibly good character. And he doesn't have like the recovery issues and like getting KO'd early issues that like Puff has. Like Wario is going to be living a lot longer. His moveset is generally more well-rounded than Puff. The next character I'd put is Yoshi. Yoshi's kind of in a similar lane to Squirtle, where he's very niche. He kind of has, you know, it's basically like the melee and like brawl version of Yoshi, just like put together in one character. And that's, you know, that has its its positives and negatives. There are some Yoshi mains out there. They're just not nearly as common as you would think they would be, and that's kind of the way how Yoshi is in Melee too. I would like to see more Yoshis in the future. I think Yoshi could have some promise. Like I could see Yoshi maybe going up to high mid maybe in the future if more people played him. I just think a lot of the things that were holding Yoshi back were like his recovery, not having a standardized up B, which was kind of always in his character archetype, was not having a standardized. The thing about Yoshi though is like he's so in his own lane. He's kind of niche. You won't really see him a lot, but I think definitely he has a lot of promise to him. Let's see. The next character I'd put in the top tier, I would put Captain Falcon. I did put Captain Falcon at my number 2 spot last year, and that's, Captain Falcon is used by a lot of people. He feels like he's like one of the most used characters, but I might be wrong on that. Like he's just used a lot. Mainly the reason is because it's basically a better version of Melee Captain Falcon. So if you liked Melee Captain Falcon, this is like a way better version of that. You can grab ledge with side B. Down B is a better recovery tool. His recovery in general is way better. If you liked Melee Captain Falcon, this is Melee Captain Falcon, but just way, I'm not going to say way better, because that might be overshooting it, but a lot of the flaws that were in Melee Captain Falcon are like fake, which is why I say Captain Falcon is probably the most buffed Melee top tier. That's why he's better than Fox. That's why I would say he's more used than Fox. It's mainly because if you liked Captain Falcon in Melee, you're gonna like him in this game as well. People like Nunn played him in PM, and they were able to transition very easily because it's just like slightly buffed Captain Falcon. I'm not gonna say here and say he's like broken and he's busted, but he's used a lot. And he was going to top 8s. A lot of people secondary Captain Falcon. Thunder's Reign secondary Captain Falcon. I was kind of maybe overshooting it by giving him number 2, kind of ignoring the positives of like Zero Suit Samus, for example, but I still think he's like easily in the highest tier in this game. Okay, the next character I would put is Olimar. Now, Olimar is another character where I think people in the past definitely thought Olimar was really bad, but again, like I said the same thing with Squirtle and Yoshi, he's kind of a weird character. The Pikmin thing, not a lot of people even know what the Pikmin do. Like a lot of casual PM players have no idea what the Pikmin are doing. But the purple Pikmin are really strong, and the white Pikmin can like blow up if they grab onto you and stuff like that. The Pikmin all have like their own unique characteristics, and that kind of catches a lot of people off guard. One of the things that I think was holding Olimar back was his recovery. I never really liked his up B. I actually secondaried Olimar like back in 3.6 or whenever he came out. Might have been 3.0 actually. I actually secondaried Olimar because he's kind of like Sheik, but like he has a lot more unique aspects around him. His forward air, especially with the purple Pikmin, like hits really hard. He's got actually a really underrated grab. And there's actually more people maining Olimar more than ever, which is like a big thing that I think is like bringing the character up a little bit. I still think he's like, on the lower end of mid because we aren't seeing him that much, like on a crazy level. But we are seeing him more and more. Like I see a little bit of rumblings in the Olimar camp. I see them kind of pushing the character a little bit more. He's definitely more relevant than he used to be. I will say that for sure. He's more relevant than ever. But he does have a lot of positives that not a lot of people like really give him credit for. Like Olimar's grab is really good. It lingers for a long time and it kind of catches you off guard. Definitely try out Olimar if you like Olimar. Like definitely try him out. It's an interesting take on the character. The last character in top is Sonic. Sonic is very similar to Captain Falcon. They're basically like the same character archetype, just on a different level. A rushdown character, but he has a lot of like kind of aspects about him that are actually really aggressive. I think he's very underrated. I think more people should try out Sonic because I think he has the chance of being like a little bit higher. I could see Sonic being like maybe above Meta Knight or something like that. It just depends on the placements and stuff like that, like how far are people pushing the character in the meta. He's really annoying to fight against, but not the same reasons why he's annoying to fight against in like Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. Like Sonic isn't gonna like camp you out in this game, but he has the spin dash, the side B and the down B, which are both like really strong tools, and you can cancel them into wave dashes and grab people. And his forward air is incredibly aggressive attack off stage. So he like moves really fast for, you know, what you would kind of expect Sonic to be, and it really kind of just like fills his character archetype out really well. I definitely think he's really good. I definitely think he's like kind of like an offshoot Captain Falcon, like maybe a more technical Captain Falcon. He's really good. The next character I'd put in the mid tier, I would probably put the where's Ganondorf? I did kind of overrate Ganondorf a little bit. I still had him in the mid tier, but I had him a little bit higher, and I kind of lowered him a little bit because he's the powerful but slow character. But he does move kind of fast, more than you would expect Ganondorf to move. He's not like Smash 4 Ganondorf or Brawl Ganondorf, where he's like, you know, moving like an old grandpa. Like he's much more buffed mobility wise, and he has a cape that he can use to reflect projectiles with. He moves like his wave dashes and wave lands are really fast, faster than like you would expect him to be. So people can move with the character despite him being relatively slow, but still, because he's just his DNA of just being that character archetype, I feel like that in general just always kind of hold him back. You know, people will actually do work with the character because, like I said, like Ganondorf will catch up on you sometimes, like because he just hits really hard. He still hits really crazy hard. His down air is really strong. His forward air is really strong. Again, though, it just depends. I don't really see Ganondorf nearly as much as like I think I used to as well. I think that's another thing. I think Ganondorf was used a little bit more in like 2016, I want to say. But that's just based off of what I've been seeing. I could be wrong on that. But I just personally think he's definitely like one of the lower tier characters in this game. Still good. You can still do work with Ganondorf. If you're a Ganondorf main, like don't fret. Also, he has the float technique, which is, you know, this isn't like Smash Ultimate Ganondorf. This is like, you know, kind of a different version of the character. A little bit more mobile version of the character. But again, it's still Ganondorf. Like, you know, he just because he has a cape doesn't mean he can like beat every projectile. Like the cape has some weaknesses. The next character I would put Donkey Kong in the high tier. Donkey Kong is a great character. Thunder's Reign showed that like Donkey Kong was not a low tier at all. Donkey Kong used to be thought of as like a low tier character, which is kind of funny. And Thunder's Reign basically proved everyone wrong, you know, winning many grand finals and just many tournaments with the character. By the way, high tier is like still characters that can like win tournaments, still characters that can win top 8s, go to top 8s, or even win grand finals, but they might have a little bit more of a like a weakness compared to the other characters. The one weakness with Donkey Kong is his recovery could be somewhat susceptible to getting, you know, he can get kind of beat up a little bit, like recovery wise, because he still has that same up B that he has in previous games. It is better at like recovering in general, but it's still like limited with going upwards with it. It's not really that strong with that at all. But Donkey Kong just like hits really hard for like no reason. And in P+ he got a brand new move. He has like an aerial down B, which is like a clap move. It's actually kind of hype. I actually kind of like it a lot. Yeah, just like Donkey Kong on paper is like really strong. His grabs are probably the best part of the character. His cargo. He has cargo forward air, which is just, you know, one of the bread and butter combos with Donkey Kong. Just cargo fair. You know, all of his aerials are really big and they hit really hard. If you liked Melee Donkey Kong, this is like a more realized version of Melee Donkey Kong. This is like Melee Donkey Kong with much less weaknesses. And you will see Donkey Kong actually. Like, people do play the character. I've seen Donkey Kong, like, just, you know, on net play and stuff like that. You know, he is kind of common now, which is kind of funny because he was a bad character in Melee. The next character I'll put is Ness. Ness is my main. The thing with Ness is, I would say he lacks in the range department, but he has really good combos, and his recovery is not a horrible recovery. He can get kind of, I think if you're really good at beating Ness's recovery, it's if you can disrupt his up B. That is the big thing about him. Now they did change it so like it's harder to kind of clank with his his up B PK Thunder. That was a big thing with Ness in the past, is like, okay, just get on top of that and then Ness instantly dies. There is still like, that's still like part of the counterplay, but it's much harder to do. It's more character specific than it used to be, and I think that's fine. But the main thing with Ness is he does struggle in matchups where characters outrange him heavily. So characters like Marth, Ike is, oh, I hate the Ike matchup so much. I main Ness, so this is my character. PK Fire is not broken. If you think PK Fire is broken in this game, like, you know, Neat Wolf's laser, you know, like there's way, in my opinion, there's way more broken projectiles than PK Fire. Like sure, maybe PK Fire is annoying because it leads to Ness going for the grab, and you know, Ness's grab leads, or down throw leads to his back air, and his back air is really strong. You know, he has like a Falcon-esque kind of knee with his back air specifically, and you know, he's kind of a floaty character. He has double jump cancels. Definitely way better than the melee version of the character by far. He's really fun to play. His magnet is also incredibly good. He has up air chain grabs on you know, fast fallers like Fox and Falco. You know, he can combo some of the top tiers. Like, he can combo them pretty well. It's just there's some specific matchups in the game that I do think he struggles significantly at. You know, Marth, for example. I did mention Marth, but like characters like that where they just outrange him, it makes it really hard. Like Toon Link, or even Link, like a really good Link that's good at stuffing out Ness's approaches, makes it so hard to get in. That's the main thing holding him back, and that's the thing with Ness, is there was a lot of people maining the character because he's really fun to play. But like you would see them in top 8s maybe every now and then, but like this is like more like 2016, 2017, but like you wouldn't see them win the tournament, you know. And Ness is a really common character, so that's the thing I think holding him back is the range department. He kind of lacks a little bit. But still, don't get me wrong, he's like a combo fiend. Like, Ness is great at comboing, and his down air is really great off stage. Kind of faster than you would expect Ness to be. I think he has the chances of maybe going up in the tier list, but again, like I think more people need to push him harder. But the thing is, though, he has those problem matchups, you know, like Ike and so on, for example. Sheik is really good. Sheik is, again, a buffed version of Melee Sheik. Now, what I think... The thing with Sheik is there's a lot of characters that kind of do her character archetype, and there's a lot of characters that kind of play similarly to her, like Mario, for example. But the thing with Sheik is I think more people gotta play her to get her into top tier, in my opinion. Malachi did play Sheik in the past. That was like one of his mains. But I'm more curious to see who he's gonna like pick solidified wise, like in the future, because usually that character usually ends up going up in the tier list. But Sheik's a great character. I actually secondary Sheik. Basically, her moveset all around is like way more buffed than the melee version. She can use back throw as a combo tool along with down air. I'm sorry, not down air, down throw. So she can kind of do chain throws, like really with different throws in her moveset, and it kind of adds a little bit more variety to her character instead of just using, you know, down throw forward air, down throw forward air just over and over and over. I would say she's like, her big thing is like she has a little bit more disjoint compared to other characters, which also definitely puts her in the high tier as well. The fact that she has so much disjoint really helps her character out a lot. Her back air has crazy amount of disjoint, and I would say she's definitely one of the better melee characters for sure. Like she's definitely like all around like slightly better from the melee version of the character. So if you like playing her in melee, definitely try her out in P+. The next character I will put is Falco. I do get trashed on for kind of shitting on Falco in the past. Falco is no bad character by any means, but he is definitely worse compared to the melee iteration of the character. It's kind of like Puff, where, you know, other characters can combo him now. You know, there's much more characters in the cast, so it's harder for Falco to deal with a lot of newer matchups that are in the game. His laser is slower than Wolf's and Fox's, but doesn't necessarily mean that means it's bad. It just means it kind of has different utility. B-reverse lasers are actually kind of underrated with the character. The big thing I think that was holding him back, and I still think holds him back, is his recovery. His recovery, you know, his up B more specifically is kind of bad. It doesn't go nearly as high as the other species, and it's kind of a reason why he can get gimped pretty easily as well. I think also another thing, because Wolf exists, a lot of Falco mains will just play Wolf because Wolf kind of does similar things, but like slightly better than Falco. Don't necessarily think, like, I don't think the character's bad. You know, the character can definitely still do work. You know, it is Falco. It's just a slightly better version of Melee Falco. Lasers did get slightly nerfed, but all around, like, he got a lot more tech from the PM engine and the P+ engine that do benefit his character. But again, like, You know, there's a lot more matchups this time around. You know, characters like, you know, Donkey Kong can combo him really easily, or Bowser even, which is kind of crazy to think about considering how good the character is in Melee. You know, I think with Falco, if he's going to top 8s more often, I could see him going up, but as of right now, a lot of people just like kind of stick with Wolf and Fox more specifically, and Falco's kind of like, you'll see Falco every now and then, don't get me wrong, like you will see Falco, but you know, he's just slightly worse in my opinion than the other two. The next character is actually Fox, ironically. Anyone who says Fox is a bad character in this game, anyone who says Fox is trash, they're wrong. Fox is good. Yeah, Laser's got like a slight nerf. Correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure they might have nerfed Shine very slightly, but I'm not 100% on that, if that's still in P+. Still though, he's still a great character. He's still really good at comboing, doing the standard Fox stuff that Fox does in Melee. Slight buffs here and there because of the engine changes in P+. You know, Fox is actually good at like comboing Wolf, and also Falco is too. I forgot to mention that in one of my videos. They're both good at like comboing Wolf. You know, a lot of characters are good at comboing Wolf, but so there is some niche to the Fox character, the Fox matchup. I think a lot of matchups also are very unexplored with Fox. The one thing holding him back though is Wolf existing, yes. Also the fact that there's a lot more matchups in the game, and he can kind of, you know, he's gonna be getting chain grabbed by more characters like Ike, for example, or Ness. You know, he's still very good. I don't understand why people used to like. It was kind of a meme to say Fox is bad, so PM is bad because Fox is bad, but Fox is not bad in this game. Let's see. The next character after Falco is Zelda. Zelda, the thing about Zelda, I think she has a lot of potential. It's just the thing about Zelda is she does get KO'd kind of easily, but she's ridiculously faster compared to like Melee Zelda. Not a giant margin, but just like significantly better. And her Din's Fire is much better than it was in Melee. That projectile has gone through many iterations throughout PM. There used to be like 3 Din's Fires you could shoot out at once, which is kind of funny to think about. Still a really good character, just like her main weakness is probably the fact that she can get KO'd really easily. She does move really fast for what you would expect for Zelda, and her wave dash is still kind of short, you know, so she's not the most mobile character. But probably one of the bigger strengths that she has now is her tilts are really fast, and they're actually much stronger than what they used to be, so they're actually like good like get off me tools, and they can kind of KO unexpectedly because of just like how buffed they are compared to what they were in Melee. I actually like Zelda. Zelda's like fun to play, so if you like playing, you know, kind of like a more unique, floatier but kind of fast character, like Zelda's really good. Alright, the next character I would say is Marth. Marth is also slightly buffed compared to the Melee version of the character. His up smash has more hitboxes on it, so it can actually like kind of catch characters that are around him. It won't just like directly hit up top of the sword. It has like some slight amount of hitboxes on the side, which actually helps with its utility. The thing about Marth is because he has really good range, he's good at like stuffing out characters that have significantly worse range compared to him. And also he's good at comboing floaty characters. That's one of his really interesting things that he has compared to the other. And he is like significantly buffed compared to the Melee version, but not the point where I would say like, you know, he's broken or anything like that. Like if you liked playing Melee Marth, you will definitely transition very well to PM Marth, because it's pretty much the same character, just slightly better. Let's see, moving on to the next character, I would say Luigi is in the mid tier right here. The thing with Luigi, he's kind of like a very distinctive character, very slippery, kind of in his own lane, especially compared to the high tiers and top tiers. He has, you know, still a very floaty wave dash, really fast in air. His down B on the ground is actually a really decent option, you know, for... He can get comboed by a lot of the characters that like are good at dealing with floaties, like probably Marth, I would think. And projectile users are probably really annoying for Luigi, because Luigi does have a projectile, but it's not one of the best. It's decent, but just not like, you know, amazing. And because his mobility is kind of really good on stage, but not really that good in the air, it kind of, you know, messes with his ability, I think, to go up in higher levels of tournament. Don't get me wrong though, he's still a good character. You'll actually see him. I Love Bagels, for example, has always like mained the character. And even I Love Bagels has mentioned like how Luigi has like faults, but like he's still like kind of a solid character, and he really likes playing Luigi. So I think what really is going to count for Luigi, you know, if there were more Luigi mains, and he's pretty common, but like if he was more common, that could definitely be more of a reason to push him higher in the meta. But for now, I think his placement's kind of deserved, I think, just for where he is right now. The thing with Mario is actually he had sort of a glow up a little bit, so I put him, I think, slightly higher than I put him last year, and that's because the Doctor has like won multiple tournaments with Mario, which is kind of insane. I was kind of weary about putting Mario like right next to Sheik. You know, that I kind of thought about that, but I think where I put him is fine. But he's like on a roll right now with Mario. So, you know, like I said, like these high tier characters can win tournaments, they can win grand finals. And people used to think Mario kind of had like the range issue that other characters in the cast kind of have, and he still is kind of a stubby character. Mario is basically like kind of like Sheik, but like he's more stubby. But his recovery, I would say, is better than Sheik's. So despite like having less range, his recovery is pretty decent, especially if you master like all of his recovery tools, like his down B, for example. But he's like kind of on a roll with the character, so I'm very intrigued where he could, like, if this continues and Mario just keeps winning, and Mario might be higher, you know. Like, I think he has a lot of promise. He's making the Doctor more specifically is making the character look really well, really good. And kind of making me realize, like, wow, Mario is actually, like, really solid. Like, you know, I thought Mario was going to have a lot of trouble. Like, for example, he had to face Thunder's Reign, who, you know, plays Marth and Roy, and I thought Mario was going to have a lot of trouble in that matchup. But it was really interesting to kind of see, like, him kind of hold his own in that matchup. So it was kind of cool to see. One of the biggest things with Mario is his forward air just, like, hits like a truck. That's one of the best things about the character in PM. His forward air is really good. Really good. It's really good at KOing, you know, off stage. It's also really good. It's just good in general. It's a good combo ender. It's probably Mario's best tool by far is his forward air. But, like, only time will tell, man. I think Mario, if he keeps winning, like, you could argue maybe going higher. That would be surprising. Pit's been seen a little bit more in the meta since he was buffed in P+. I think Pit definitely was done a pretty bad hand during the last update for PM, which is 3.6. They kind of did him dirty. When they nerfed him when Pit was like winning, you know, a lot of tournaments, when Armada was playing the character like a long time ago, Pit was actually seen a lot more in the meta. A lot of people were playing him. He was used a lot more. His recovery was insane. He was just like really an insane character. And then they nerfed him significantly. They nerfed him to probably like bottom 5, bottom 10. Thankfully, P+ like buffs the character. Now he's a lot more normalized. He's not nearly as bad, you know, compared to everyone else. Like, he didn't really have a lot of kill power after he was nerfed, and some of his moves were kind of like a little janky. So he definitely feels a lot more like a character this time around. So if you like Pit, you know, and you like playing him in the past, definitely try him out, because he's definitely the best he's ever been since he was nerfed. And people are like playing the character. Like Sosa had a Pit secondary that he was doing work with. So I definitely think Pit like definitely has more time in the sunlight, if that makes sense. You know, I think Pit definitely has potential for sure after being buffed, because he definitely needed it. Snake would have been higher if this was like 3.6. The character had a really egregious combo. I think most people agreed it was egregious because it ended up getting nerfed. But Snake had a down B. Down B was like really, really good. It was killing at really low percents. If you were at 80%, it would basically guarantee a kill, which was kind of a little abusive in my opinion, a little kind of just like overkill. And they did nerf it accordingly. But just because it got nerfed, Snake is still a great character. Just a very technical character. A lot of people who have no idea, like who have never fought Snake, like you really got to prepare for the matchup, because he has like his own unique set of tools that not a lot of characters have, like his trank that puts you to sleep. His down smash is also like a mine that can go off if you touch it, and there's its own counterplay with that. He's really heavy too. He's like lives for a long time. He can like blow himself up with his down B and like use it as a recovery tool. It's really kind of strange that's even possible, but like that's how unique Snake is. I actually like Snake, but I just didn't like, the thing about Snake is I didn't like, you know, the more abusive parts of his moveset in the past. You were also like in the past, if you got if you got stickied, you wouldn't see it. It was like very hard to see if you were stickied, and a lot of times people would like not know they were gonna be, you know, they're at like the potential of dying, you know, because they're stickied and they didn't know it. But now there's more of a notification now that like goes off when you are stickied. So it's kind of cool actually. I actually like that buff, even though it is slightly a nerf. I think it just makes the character a little bit more balanced, because his character was kind of just all around those like kind of more broken aspects about him. But they nerfed him accordingly, and I'm kind of glad, because Snake feels a lot more. He actually feels kind of fun. Like, I actually think Snake is a fun character, and he still is definitely tournament viable for sure. He still is a great character, just not like, you know, he was arguably like, you know, top 5, you know, or top 3 in 3.6 maybe. You could say that maybe. Samus. So Samus has a ice mode that was actually buffed in P+. Not a lot of people know about that. It's his side taunt. The ice mode was usually considered worse than the fire mode or plasma mode, whatever you call it, the normal mode. But they did change it. They did make it so the ice mode is a little bit more viable now. The thing about Samus is I think she's always kind of probably going to be a mid-tier-ish character. You will see people do work with Samus, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like Melee where, you know, she's kind of like in her own lane, kind of very different from everyone else, more defensive, more slower paced, but still strong, still has a lot of good options, and she's more unique compared to the Melee version of the character. There's a lot of people that play Samus in Melee, and they like the PM version, you know, because she has, you know, a lot more options, and it's kind of really fun in my opinion. Like her ice up smash is a really hype move. The ice moves I feel like are really underutilized because they're so like unique to PM. But again, time will tell. I feel like she kind of earns her placement right there. I think that's totally fine for her. I think time will tell. If I see Samus more, like, you could definitely argue going in a high mid, you know. But it's hard for her to win a tournament because she does have matchups where I would say she probably has a lot more trouble with characters that are, you know, a lot faster than her and so on and so forth. Oh, excuse me. Bowser. So Bowser is the most buffed P+ character by far, and the thing with Bowser is he used to be a bottom 2 character. He might have been the worst or one of the worst, definitely like a contender for one of the worst characters in PM. And then they buffed him significantly, gave him a fireball. They took away his fire breath, which was kind of a more niche move that was in his moveset. And they like basically made him into a high tier character capable of winning a super major with you know, with Bowser. You can win a super major with Bowser now, which is kind of insane. Since Bowser was buffed, he's been seen a lot more in the meta. A lot more people are playing Bowser. I made a lot of videos about Bowser in the past, just like kind of how crazy it is, the amount of changes that he got, and just how just different this version of the character is. I think Bowser definitely was an underutilized character in like 3.6. Like, not a lot of people knew how to deal with the armor that he has. You know, he can kind of take attacks and then hit you back because of his armor and his smash attack armor and stuff like that. Not a lot of people were really known with like how to deal with Bowser. You know, he wasn't seen that much. But then they made him faster. They changed his jump squat, for example, which were big changes to the character, and then gave him a fireball projectile that like kind of hits like one of his aerials, like it hits hard for being a projectile. Now it only charges up like every 13 seconds. Still a very good character. Like, the fact Malachi won a super major with him kind of shows you that Bowser is a good character in P+ for sure. Some people think he might fall off a little bit when people figure out the matchup, because he is a big character. He does have some of the same flaws, but his like flaws are like significantly less a part of his weaknesses, if that makes sense. There's still like a weakness, but they're not. It's not like Dedede, you know, like he can get in now, or he hits really hard, you know. His Koopa Claw is also really good. He can spike with his Koopa Claw, you know. Not a lot of people know about that. He has a version where you can like punch people straight down. I put him in the same spot last year as well, and I think that's still fair, because you do see him a lot more now than you used to, which is a big change, and also he's capable of winning big tournaments. Let's see, after Samus we have R.O.B. I think R.O.B is like still in the same place as I put him last year. You know, he's definitely a lot more mobile than like the Brawl version of the character. He is definitely more aggressive than like the Smash 4 like Brawl version of R.O.B. His gameplay is kind of centered around his top. He has like an item which, if you know about aerial glide tossing, it's a character specific tech that's in PM and P+. It's where you get like a pseudo wave dash from like throwing a projectile. Well, every character can do it, but like R.O.B's is like decent because he has a projectile, and you know Diddy Kong's kind of in the same lane as well, for having, you know, a projectile as well. The thing with R.O.B is he's more a niche character. I remember seeing R.O.B a little bit more commonly back in the day, but you kind of don't really see him nearly as much. Not a horrible character by any means. He can be like kind of campy because he's kind of like centered around his projectiles and his top. The next character, I would say, we were talking about Diddy Kong before. I think Diddy Kong's high mid. Diddy Kong was like really good in previous updates of PM, you know, like when Junebug played the character, for example, like he was, you know, winning a lot of tournaments with Diddy Kong. The thing with Diddy Kong is he did get nerfed slightly. He definitely got nerfed a little bit, more deservedly. A lot of a lot of really strong characters back in the day got nerfed. But he's still really good. You know, yeah, he doesn't have like 2 bananas. Like this is not like anything egregious going on. But he's a really kind of like a trickster, like kind of X character. If you like aerial glide tossing, like Diddy Kong's movement is really good. So the fact he can aerial glide toss with his banana, you know, like that's kind of really unique for his moveset. What I think also changed a lot for Diddy Kong, which keeps him out of high tier, is like people figured out like aerial glide tossing, and like you saw like Thunder's Rain using aerial glide tossing with, you know, Donkey Kong, you know, and kind of using the banana against Diddy Kong. That's like a big thing to kind of counter Diddy Kong, is like, okay, how do I beat Diddy Kong? Like, you know what, I become good at aerial glide tossing as well. So when more people kind of adapted to, you know, okay, this is the banana, like you got to know how to deal with it. It kind of led to Diddy Kong, I think, slightly falling a little bit, but he's still really good. His side B can like go through shields and like grab people. That's one of the underrated things, I think, with Diddy Kong. It like catches people off guard for sure. And there's like 2 different versions of that move. There's a version that you can use as an attack, or you can use as, you know, you can also use it as a recovery tool, whatever. Diddy Kong is a good character for sure. I would like to see more people play him. I think that would be nice. I do miss seeing like Diddy Kong as commonly as he used to be, but he's like a very fun character. Now Game & Watch was significantly nerfed compared to the 3.6 version of the character. Yeah, he was nerfed pretty hard. This is probably the most contentious like nerf that was in PM or P+, I mean. Now while Bowser got buffed significantly, Game & Watch definitely got like a significant amount of nerfs. Game & Watch was like arguably top 6, you could say. So one of the best characters. He was winning tournaments. He was super common. A lot of people play him. Now he is at a point where a lot of people that used to main him in the past don't really main him anymore, because they nerfed a lot of the vulnerability that used to be on his attacks. His attacks used to have really long hitboxes that also got nerfed. Just all around, he used to be a really good character, but he is still good. Like, I'm not going to say Game & Watch isn't capable of doing well. Like, if you're in the mid tier, like, you're still a solid character. It's just he's not nearly as egregious as he was before. He's less common now. Because of that, a lot of people that main Game & Watch in the past have switched to other characters, like Pikmin, for example, has switched to Ike. Definitely one of the most contentious changes to P+ was nerfing Game & Watch, because people, like, the Game & Watch mains kind of took it personally, because, like, they're like, you guys went after our character. I still think he's good. It just requires more work to get to, like, what was, like, seemingly really easy to do in the past. You know, he had really simple combos. His down tilt was, like, one of his best options that he had. I think his bacon has been like changed multiple times. They've nerfed it and buffed it, nerfed it, buffed it, nerfed it. Like, they've done a lot of things to Game & Watch. I still think he's definitely good. I might have said he was like unviable in the past. I don't know if I've said that, but like I still think he's viable. I think when more people pick up Game & Watch, and if they really like the character, I could see him going higher. It's just really now he got nerfed, and a lot of people dropped the character because of that. So Ivysaur used to be thought of as a lowish tier character character, mainly because he was kind of slow, and then like Soth like kind of started using the character and made Ivysaur look really fast. Soth really like on his own made Ivysaur kind of just like his own thing, and like really made the character look incredible. And in fact, I think I saw Soth win Honeypot yesterday with Ivysaur. Ivysaur's a great character. He has a Solar Beam, which he can charge up with his recovery attack. His neutral B recovers HP slightly. It's a very slow recovery. It's not very fast, but it kind of like adds a lot of interesting depth to the character, because he was like one of the first characters to be given an attack that allows him to recover HP basically, and also like have a Solar Beam, which was kind of very unique for its time. The thing about Ivysaur though is I think he does have some matchups where he does like kind of have some issues, especially if they can combo floaties very well. But like for his back air is like really good. For example, it can actually beat a lot of projectiles, like Wolf's Laser, for example. I think Ivysaur is a really fun character. I think more people should try him out, because he's really kind of underutilized in the past because people thought he was bad, and now he's like, now people can win tournaments with Ivysaur, you know, so high mid characters are good. I definitely think Ivysaur has a lot of promise too. His Nair is really fast, you know. He doesn't have as fast of a side B as like Smash Ultimate Ivysaur, but it's still like a decent tool. I like his down B too that they added to him, because for those who don't know, the Pokemon don't transform. Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard don't transform. They don't have the down B transform in this game. They separated all three of them, so they kind of just are their own unique characters. And I think Ivysaur, they did a really good job with him, because he's really fun to play. I remember he was one of my secondaries back when I first started playing PM. He was definitely a really fun character, and still is. I would say Charizard, since we talked about Ivysaur. Charizard is another good character. He's solid mid-tier character. People thought he was worse in the past because he's, you know, big, a large character, but his recovery is like really good. He has multiple jumps. You know, he is a little bit slower. He's not like the fastest, but he does have decent ground speed, which is actually pretty fast. Like what I mean by like slow is like his jump is kind of slow. He's actually a solid character for sure, and he's basically like disjoint the character. His Nair has a lot of disjoint. He has a lot of range. You know, he kind of has attacks where he goes a little bit lower, like his forward tilt, and his down tilt's also a really good attack at setting up combos, and he hits hard too. He also has a Thunder Punch, which is new. They did change his Fire Breath to Thunder Punch, which allows him to like go back on stage incredibly fast. And also it can be used to like punch forward. You know, it's not like Bowser's Fireball, where like that move like really centralized and like changed the character. I think it hasn't shown that it's like changed, you know, Charizard significantly, but it is better than Fire Breath, I would say. I would assume most Charizard mains probably agree. I think Ike is actually probably really underrated in my opinion, because Ike has incredible amount of range. His quick draw side B is a big part of his moveset. He can wave dash out of quick draw. He can also, his grabs are incredibly good and they're really fast. You know, he's really hard to deal with as a Ness main, because he has a lot of range and his sword is just really big, and his forward air, you know, he has attacks that hit really hard. You know, he has a Dacus that's also like a really long Dacus. His smash attacks hit hard as well, like his forward smash. You know, his forward smash is startup, but it's probably going to guarantee a kill at higher percents for sure. I think Ike is definitely one of the most underrated characters in my opinion. I think Ike could be a high tier character. I definitely think that, but that's my opinion, because I'm a biased Ness main who sucks. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I definitely think more people should main Ike, because he's really good. Like, I feel like there should be more people playing this character, because his range is incredible. He's really good for like, you know, a sword character. He feels like he hits really hard. You know, his attacks pack a punch, and he has the quick draw that allows him to kind of start combos, you know, really fast or whatever. He's a really interesting character. I think he's kind of underrated for being a high mid character. I could definitely see him becoming high tier if more people push him. So try him out, you know. But as a Ness main, I hate fighting against him. So next character is Link. Link is a very good character compared to like what he was in Melee and Brawl. He's actually surprisingly kind of fast for like being the slower Link. Like, I think the highest level of Link mains are actually moving very fast. And I think the best thing about Link is if he's able to stuff people's approaches with his projectiles, because that's one of the best parts of his moveset, I would say, is his boomerang, his bombs, his arrow, even, his Z-air, his hook shot is actually pretty good attack as well. With Link, though, he is heavier. That is the one thing that, like, he has a slight drawback, though, is he's pretty heavy and he can get comboed very easily because he's heavy. But if he's able to keep people away, it does make it hard for them to kind of get that advantage on him. And, maybe you could argue maybe his up B is kind of susceptible to getting, gimped. You could maybe argue that. But he's still a very solid character. I think Link is good. You'll definitely see people play the character and do very well. The Link mains, the really diehard Link mains are good with the character. So, don't get me wrong, like, I put him in the high point of the mid tier, but he's a solid character for sure. The next character I would put is Lucas. Incredibly technical character. He's basically kind of like an offshoot version of a Spacey, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't expect Lucas to be that. He's very different from very, very, very different. They changed him almost completely. He's a pseudo kind of fast faller character. He has kind of a shine. His magnet is basically like a shine. It makes him go behind him. There's people that main Lucas and it's like, holy crap, this is insane. The level of inputs with the character are really technical, really at the highest levels, I think. It does take a lot to be good with Lucas, but I think once you get to that point, like Hyper Flame makes the character look really good. What he's done with Lucas is honestly kind of insane, because this character, I think I thought this character could have been better on paper, but I think he kind of deserves where he's at right now, because he's kind of so hard to be good with, kind of like Mewtwo in a way. It does kind of, you don't really see him nearly as much. He does get comboed very, I would say, easily, kind of like a fast faller. But he has Marth-esque movement, and he combos like a Spacey. So if you're into that, try him out, man. He's very unique, very interesting character for sure. Hyper Flame is probably what you should look at if you're trying to play Lucas. Hyper Flame is one of the best at the character, and he's been playing him for a long time. The next character I would say is Ice Climbers. Ice Climbers are solid. There's people I think Fresh, have played the character. There's Tech Boy, very good Ice Climber main. Ice Climbers are significantly better than the melee version of the character. They don't have wobbling though, so wobbling is not in P+. They do kind of have a pseudo wobble when they're at the ledge. So if they take you near the ledge, they can spike you off stage, and that's kind of their version of a wobble in this game, but it's not really a wobble. You have to be near the ledge. They have to take you to the ledge with their grab confirms, or either you're near the ledge or something, and then they can take advantage of that. But they're very fast. You would not expect Ice Climbers to be really fast. They're actually faster than you would expect. And their recovery is incredibly buff too. The AI for Nana is better in PM or P+. It's better in P+ than it was for Melee significantly. And that's a big reason why the characters are good. I would say they're very solid in this game. Maybe people could argue them being higher, but I think there could be more Ice Climber mains in the meta, but they're still strong. Great characters for sure. I would put Knuckles here. Knuckles is so now a year is passed, Knuckles I would say is a more mobile version of Ganondorf. Really good. Knuckles is solid. People have gone to, the grand finals of Honey Pot yesterday, there was a Knuckles in grand finals, which is crazy. Knuckles is a good character for sure. Now, I don't know if I would put him in high tier just yet, but there are people that are starting to learn the matchup now. There are people that are going crazy with the character. I would be interested to see where he ends up in the future. I don't know. I can't really predict it. I've been wrong in the past. Maybe Knuckles will be top 3. I don't know if that'll happen, but he's a more mobile version of Ganondorf, so he hits really hard, but he doesn't have the same issues of Ganondorf where Ganondorf maybe has trouble getting in some matchups and he can get camped by projectiles. Knuckles doesn't really seem to have that issue nearly as much. He's kind of like Dudley-esque character, a brawler, but his recovery is really good. His recovery, his glide side B is really strong tool, and then he can also up B out of that as well. I think Knuckles is a solid character. He's having a good first year so far. Like, he's showing up in top 8s every now and then. You know, you're seeing him do work. People are starting to pick up the character. It's looking good for him right now. So I think that his placement right there is fine for now. Lucario is a really technical character. I think that's one of the things that has held him back from being like in high and top, in my opinion. The people that are playing Lucario are people who are learning his characteristics, learning about, you know, how to use aura effectively. Because Lucario is like if Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom had like a character in PM, you know, like he's a very like Street Fighter-esque version of the character. And the reason why I'm saying that is because his moveset was like entirely changed really from the Brawl version of the character. He has like a Street Fighter kind of Ryu-esque archetype now, which is kind of interesting. So if you're into those like standard fighting games, like try out Lucario for sure. The one thing I think holding him back was just how unique he is it kind of turns a lot of people off from picking him up, but I think he can do work. You know, I've seen Lucario in grand finals of tournaments and stuff like that. I think he's a solid character. I think Pikachu is fine right here. I would say Pikachu better than the melee version of the character. His back air is significantly better in this game. I would say that's one of the biggest buffs, and also he can cancel his up B and do some like crazy unique tech out of that. He does kind of lack range, but he kind of makes up for it in his like agility. But he is still kind of like has some similar issues that he had in melee, but like is still viable. Still a great character. His up smash is really strong. He has a great up air. For example, his Thunder Jolt is good in this game as well. His recovery is pretty solid, just like he is small but like nimble. That's kind of his character archetype in melee, and I would say he's still kind of in that niche in P+, as probably as much as like characters I would say that are in the high and top in my opinion. Now I dropped Peach a bit because I think I overrated her in the past, kind of the inverse of Zero Suit Samus. I think the high mid placement is more, it makes more sense. I think Peach is good. I think Peach can go to top 8s and even maybe grand finals. Like Malachi has shown that with the character. The thing though is she is kind of like, she is just Peach, like melee Peach, but just like slightly buffed. She feels a little bit more faster, I feel like, in this game, but she does kind of have some of the same issues that she has in melee. But she is buffed. She has a new down B that she can use in the air. She can grab people if she's near them and like kind of throw them away. I think that's a Super Mario Brothers 2 reference. I did overrate her in the past because she won, like Malachi won tournaments with her, but I kind of had to look like prospectively, like there's not a crazy amount of Peaches in the meta, you know, like to be in the top tier you have to be pretty common, I think, and Peach is not like the most common character. So I think high mid is more deserved. That was just kind of my lack of hindsight. And then Toon Link, I would say this is a good spot for Toon Link. Toon Link has matchups where he does excel very well in because he has decent projectiles and he's really good at like kind of playing keep away and, you know, throwing bombs and setting up the stage to be in his way and with his bombs and his, you know, his arrows and stuff like that. You know, his arrows can stick to the stage and kind of inflict a little bit % if people go near them. That's because there's like fire arrows, but he is like a smaller character. He isn't seen nearly as much. I would say there might be a few matchups he might struggle in that might push him from, you know, being higher. But he is a solid character when he is able to do his game plan very well, kind of similar to Snake almost, but like in a more different way. You know, people like Lunchables like had a pocket Toon Link for like specific matchups to kind of, you know, where Roy wasn't doing nearly as well, he would pull out the Toon Link, you know. And that's where I would say Toon Link really does well, is kind of doing his game plan. His Z air is really good. All of his projectiles are really good. Pretty decent character. And then Roy is the last one I would say in high mid. Roy is still a solid character, but like he does get comboed, kind of bullied a little bit off stage. If people are able to kind of intercept his recovery, he's a fast falling character, so he kind of falls like a rock. But this is not Melee Roy. He's not a horrible character. This is like a way better version of Melee Roy. His forward smash hits really hard. His back air is actually really cool, really interesting. It's made into a KO move. You know, this is before Smash 4, so like the PM team did a really good job like kind of solidifying Roy, making him into his own unique thing, changing him up and making the character fill his own niche, really. He's a fast falling character, so yeah, he gets comboed by like Donkey Kong really well. You know, he has a sword though. He hits pretty hard with the sword. He's a strong character. His side B, he can hit behind people with it. Like that's something that Marth can't do. But the one thing with Marth is like Marth has probably a more consistent recovery, and like Marth can combo floaty characters really well, which you could maybe argue like the floatier characters might, you know, bully Roy a little bit because of his weight. You know, he's a fast faller, for example. You know, so but he is buffed. He is definitely buffed. It's just like there's probably some matchups where he gets kind of shut down, which is the big probably negative around Roy. But he's still a solid character for sure. And Lunchables has shown that. Like Lunchables has done very, very well with Roy. Even Lunchables needed to have secondaries, you know, like Marth and Toon Link for certain matchups because, you know, Roy is going to struggle in some matchups. But still good, still solid. Alright guys, that is the tier list. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys for you know, watching all the way through. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, there's a Patreon down below if you guys want to get content early and be part of the Discord and stuff like that. Also, I live stream during the weekend, so if you guys want to come through on those weekend live streams, you know, that would be cool. So take care of you guys. You guys have a good one, and peace out.